This is the entryway you come in. Right now it's all a mess because we're in the process of creating this brand new ministry, fresh paint on the walls, and you can see this is... I think plateau and even decline really happens when churches lose sight of their vision, of what they're trying to accomplish, and they stop measuring the goals that are getting them toward the mission that they have. Is a church just here so that we can count the numbers and sing a few hymns and have a prayer and a sermon, collect an offering? That's not church. That's not worship. That's not ministry. I'm Pastor Benjamin Orian. I'm the lead pastor of the Springdale Adventist Fellowship in Springdale, Arkansas, located in the western part of the Ozark Mountains, northwest Arkansas. The Adventist work in Arkansas was established here in Springdale in 1885. Back in those days, Springdale had, maybe 500 people in the entire town. And the church was established, and a year later they had about 100 attending, which means about 1 in 5 were Adventists or attending the Adventist church in town. And so there's a rich history of Adventist pioneering and growth. In the next 2 years, they anticipate our population here in northwest Arkansas to exceed 1 million. Tyson Chicken, the biggest chicken manufacturing food distributor here, is right here in Springdale. We've got J.B. Hunt. We've got Walmart headquartered just 25 miles down the road from here. And so all of that is a drawing point to bring people into the area. So with this kind of growth, there are lots of opportunities. Springdale today has about 70,000 people in population and within the city limits. When I came to pastor the church, they had between 100 and 110, maybe 120 attending. Yes, they had baptisms, but the overall church as a whole never grew. Having new faces rotating in and old faces, slipping out and going somewhere else, that's not really church growth.
Our church went without a pastor for almost 2 years. That's a long time for a church to survive on its own. A lot of things can happen to cause a little separation. But I like to think that it took that time for God to beat a little sense into this church. And finally, when that came about, we were able to select a pastor.
At the time that I came, they had been without a pastor for 15 to 18 months, somewhere in that range. I'm not 100% sure, but and it depends on which member you talk to. One member says a year, another member says 2 years. I think that goes to the state of the mind of the church, though. They weren't even able to agree on how long they'd been without a pastor. All they knew was, we want to do things, but we don't have pastoral leadership. This group is pushing, this group is pulling. They both think that they're doing the right thing. The disunity that was in this church was not because they were fighting and really just causing friction among members. Although that existed, the disunity of the church was, how do we get to where we go? Different ideas and no one person to really help them focus, take some from here, and focus it all together.
So when Pastor Ben came in, the things that we had on our list were vital. Give us that leadership so we could do the outreach, so that we could communicate with the community and even outside our community.
So now I've arrived at this church, and the question is, what are we going to do next? And the first part of anything is you have to help them rewrite the narrative. What are they talking about when they leave church? Part of plateau and decline is they're not talking about it. And if they are, it's not positive. Well, how do you help them change the narrative? You help them change the narrative by giving them a narrative to discuss. We rewrote the mission statement. And with that came, for us, a new logo. That way we could have a visual representation of what we are trying to do philosophically and corporately in a real sense. That story has to change into a positive reflection of who we are in Christ. If you can accomplish that, You're on the first step to breathing some new life into a church.
Door to door, the deacons, and they would collect the offerings. And Paul says,
I was born and raised here in the church during my college years and got married. A couple years I went away, but I'm back. I wanted to come back to my home church, bring my kids, let them be involved in everything, but that wasn't the case.
We were having an evangelistic meeting with Pastor Ben being the new pastor and everything. We wanted to do a kids program, but nobody was willing to step up or do it. And Pastor Ben was like, yeah, you can do it. Tell me what you need, I'll get it for you. And we were kind of in shock because that's not normal for us. We had everything set up. We had the snacks, we had the help, we had the kids, we had everything. We were doing great. And I just happened to walk out the door to take a deep breath, and I overheard a group of adults having a conversation, and they were saying how they hoped something would happen to where I failed, that it would show that I shouldn't have been given the chance.
I have a philosophy of ministry that everybody should be involved, from the old to the young. And one of the challenges is with the vision and the mission is you'll have people give lip service to it. Yeah, I want to grow. Yeah, I want to. But wait a minute. Don't take away my response. Don't let me lose control of my area of ministry. I think for pastors, it's important to understand that it's okay to let church members go. Sometimes the growth happens after they leave. One of the worst things that we can do, and I'm guilty of this far more than I care to admit, stand in the pulpit and we say, we're needing help in cradle roll. If you have an interest in working with cradle roll kids, come see the pastor after church. Okay, that's going to be met with failure more often than not. The number one reason why people don't get involved in ministry is because they haven't been asked, specifically and directly. And so we are intentional not to worry so much about which position is empty, which position needs to, have a change or whatever. What we do is we look at our members who are involved and engaged, we plug them in, and then we go to the people that are just attending and we say, hey, what is your passion? What is your ministry interest? What is your spiritual gift? How can we get you involved in the ministry of the church?
Good morning, church. Good morning. Sorry, I meant to say happy Sabbath, church. How are you today? A lot going on out there today.
Well, when the pandemic started, none of this existed. This room was dark. It was oftentimes very grainy and dingy on the video feed that people were watching from home. We decided to create a room where we could facilitate the visual experience in worship in a better way. We kind of took some opportunity to change the lighting situation, to change the arrangements of seats, to change even the staging area so that when you come in, you are able to connect. Most churches don't have unlimited funds. In fact, a lot of churches are hurting financially. And so the question becomes, how do we prioritize what we're going to do first? How do we decide what gets done and what doesn't? It's always about growing because in my mind, as we grow, the giving will grow and then we'll be able to take care of those things. And so that became the new way of thinking. And when that became the new way of thinking, that just shoved right to the top of the priority list. And so when you walk into our sanctuary and you see beautiful light washes on the wall and you're able to hear beautiful sounds because the sound system works, if your facilities are not supporting the experience or helping you to engage the worshiper, the seeker, then you're going to have an uphill battle. And everything's controlled right here on the iPad. And so it's just the touch of a button here or there, and we can change everything going on in the house. Pastors come and go. So what happens in the church when we've done all of the things that we've done here? And I'm kind of a tech-minded pastor. But the next guy who comes in behind me may not have that same passion. So how do we keep going what's going? We have to understand that not only are we creating a vision and a mission, we're not just creating a brand and a story, we're also creating a culture.
Now that we're coming back to church, my kids are able to be involved, and other kids. I mean, they do the singing, they do the children's story, they do the offertory.
It makes me feel good because there was a point in time that I didn't want to come to church. And now I can't wait to come back. I'm ready to see everybody that I haven't seen all week. This is a huge part of my life now.
The spirit here in the church is so sweet. It's so nice to see somebody, to greet somebody, or to say, "Hey brother, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a week."
What are we actually trying to do here? Ultimately, we want to worship Jesus. We want to impact people with the gospel, and we want to connect them to Jesus, to each other, and to the community. So everything we do is relational and connectional, and people are drawn into that because they say, hey, something's different here.